It's time for school days. Help for moms and dads of school-aged kids.
I tell parents, you're like a training wheel on a bike. Your job isn't to make the bike move. Your job is to keep the bike upright.
Those of us who are the true educators, we really want to be given the opportunity to educate the whole child.
Sometimes we make decisions with our kids on how we think our kids are going to feel in the first 10 minutes versus thinking about 10 months or 10 years.
Oftentimes, as parents, I think we want to protect our kids, but I think one of the greatest gifts we can give them is allow them to experience that person.
Yeah.
Here are your hosts, David and Janita Bailey.
Well, good evening and welcome to School Days, Help for Moms and Dads of School-Age Kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey.
Well, that was a really long break. This is our first show since September, but we came back just in time for our 4th anniversary. So it was yesterday. So welcome to the beginning of season 4. Today, we're talking about figuring out how to balance your investment in extracurricular activities such as sports, dance, art, gymnastics, and cheer with investments in your child's academic achievement. Extracurricular activities provide many benefits to growing children, such as fostering teamwork, strengthening work ethic, encouraging grit, problem solving, physical fitness, confidence, and so many more things. But some parents are spending a lot of money, some between 10 to 20% of their income on extracurricular activities at the expense of other things. Let me read a question that Dave Ramsey received. This is the question. We have 2 girls in competitive gymnastics, and it's costing $12,000 to $15,000 a year at a professional gym to do all of this. My wife and I both work, and we make about $115,000 a year, but virtually all of her income goes towards paying the gymnastics bill. We're also trying to get out of debt and get better control of our money at the same time. Should we focus more on our finances? And this is just a portion of Dave Ramsey's answer. He said, you make good money, so that's not really the big issue. If you guys made $50,000 or less, I'd be yelling at you. But with your income, the gymnastics thing probably isn't going to slow you down too much when it comes to getting your financial house in order. In other words, it's a parental thing. Ask yourself why you're investing so heavily in this and what the goal is when they're adults. I think that will help you make a smart decision. So I mentioned some of the benefits of extracurricular activities. Why do you think so many Americans are spending so much money on this, Dave?
Well, I think one is some parents may be trying to live vicariously through their children, trying to have a child that maybe that they didn't have. Part of it maybe because of the drive of maybe getting the scholarships. Sometimes it might be a social status thing, being that, it was within that community saying that your child is, on this particular league versus saying that you're, playing at the Y. Nothing wrong with the Y, of course, but sometimes it's just a title thing. And, it kind of does reflect to some extent. I think maybe, that if you can afford to pay this, maybe it might be a status thing, maybe. Maybe maybe just because their kids are demanding or, maybe not demanding them, but they really want it. And so to cajole their kids, they kind of succumb to it and let them do it. And, it may cost them something, but they may not want to say no to their kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, a lot of our kids are just super talented and they just, we want to give them the opportunity. I know that with giving our kids the opportunity to do different things, we've wanted to kind of test out, what you're good at. Christina is doing, she's actually a fine arts school right now, but before we were paying for lessons and just to kind of give them an opportunity to imagine what they could be and give them an opportunity to do some different things.
Yeah. I did a whole lot growing up, but I always said I did all the non-cheerleading sports. I never had cheerleaders at any of my sporting events. So I ran track and played soccer and stuff. But, I enjoyed it. I truly did. But I just think of how many, days and hours, gosh, particularly my dad just gave up of his life for me. And to the point where when I was really getting good at soccer, my dad just said, I'm done. He said, I'm done. And I didn't.
And you were doing select soccer,
yeah,
right?
I was doing the traveling team, which is more regional. But then I started to get up to the cup level, and that's where he started traveling out of state and stuff. And he just said, I just can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start driving out of state, that's just a big commitment in time and money. And he said, you know what, you'll be all right. You join the high school team and keep it going.
Yeah. Well, today we're having kind of a mom makeover or takeover, not a mom makeover. That'd be fun, huh?
That'd be interesting for me just to watch these ladies just doing their makeup on the live on Facebook and being in the audience with listening. I'm like,
right. No, mom takeover. We've invited two moms that we've known for a little while, you and I have, who have talented kids and have found themselves having a kind of 2020 hindsight moment about the decisions they've made in investing in their children's extracurricular activities and what they may have done differently. And one of our guests I've known for 46 years. She's my sister. But before we go any further, let me just say it takes a village. If you hear a great parenting tip or nugget of advice, share it with your parent friends. Facebook it, Instagram it, tweet it, link it in, and add the hashtag SchoolDazedShow or hashtag I am School Dazed. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into the show and introduce our guests, Yvette and Kenya Rogers.
Well, they're not both Rogers.
No, they are not both Rogers. So it's Yvette Marks and Kenya Rogers.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Right.
Yes. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves, what you do and who you're married to, and a little bit about your kids.
Me first?
Sure.
Okay. I'm here for the mom makeover. No, I'm just joking.
You don't need a makeover, girl.
I'm here for. I thought I was here for that. Okay. My name is Yvette Marks. I have been a residential realtor in the DFW area, serving for 9 years now. And I am married. I've been married for 21 years. And also I have 3 kids. I have a 15, a 20-year-old, and a 20 going on 25.
Oh gosh.
Son. Yeah.
They've gotten so big, Yvette. Oh my gosh.
I know.
We've known each other about 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we moved here. Well, 8 years. And then, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
There goes the dog.
Oh, there goes the dog. All right. And then Kenya.
Hello. I'm glad you said your age and not mine. Although no worries. So I'm Kenya Rogers, married to Derek Rogers, and this year will be 26 years. No, what is this? 2022? 27, I think.
Minor details.
Oh, I'll do the math later. We have 2 children. Nia just turned 23 at Christmas, and Zion will turn 20 in less than a month. So I am a corporate human resources person and have been doing that for more years than I've had children. So that is my story.
All right. So we would love for you guys to tell us what activities your children participated in. And let's start with you, Yvette.
Okay, so they're dancers.
Mm-hmm.
They've been dancing for a very long time, since they were probably both of them maybe 4 or 5 years old. Their specialty dance is contemporary, both of them. So yeah, they have learned all the different techniques, contemporary ballet, hip hop, of course, lyrical. They've done acro dance. Yeah, they've been in practically all of the dance styles, and they've been doing it for a very long time. Competition, regular classes. So my 20-year-old is in New York. Well, yeah, she's living in New York right now. She's on a scholarship. She is in a pre-professional program that is linked to a university, New Jersey City University.
Mhm.
So she's going to get her Bachelor's of Fine Arts with this program. And then my 15-year-old, she goes to school at Booker T, Washington. So her, she's a dancer at Booker T.
And that's a fine arts school or a
Downtown Dallas.
Mm-hmm. All right. In Kenya, your kids are out of school now, but what were they doing?
Well, they're in college.
Oh,
so yes. So my children did everything. So our oldest Nia started out with dance, so ballet, tap, jazz, gymnastics, and she and her best friend did that for years and years. And then they flipped the switch and decided to do sports. So then we did soccer and basketball and volleyball. And in high school, she played 4 years of volleyball. And then our son did everything as well. So he did t-ball, he did soccer, he did football, basketball. I think that's it. And he played 4 years of basketball in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you. No, this was the math coming out of me. How many hours do you think you spend per month taking them to practices, commuting, practice, events, games, whatever it was? How much time do you think you guys were spending per week outside of your regular, just adulting things that you guys do?
I never really thought about it. I just
Really?
never thought about it. But I would say it's kind of like a full-time job. That's what it feels like, because you get home at 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah. So like I would race my kids from school. They'd get out at probably 3:30, and then I'd get home at 10 o'clock at night. And this was practically every day, and maybe not Fridays. But on the weekends, you got competition.
Right.
So I don't know how to really average that out or whatever, but it just felt like most of my time was mostly in my car, or just dropping them off, sometimes, go about my life for a little bit, and then come back and pick them up. The driving is another thing, because in order to get really good, really good classes, technical classes, you got to drive sometimes to get to the classes. And so we'd spend maybe 45 minutes to an hour on the road, going to the studio and then back home. Now, sometimes there wouldn't be traffic coming back home because it's dark and not a lot of people are out, but, at that time. But yeah, it's a lot of hours, and I've just never really thought about it, but
I did think about it, actually, because so, and I agree, it was definitely a lot of hours, depending on what it was, whether it was sports or dance or whatever. It was definitely, after school and evenings and all of that. But I did think about it because I didn't live life like this growing up. Now, I wasn't a sports person. I was a dance, piano, that kind of stuff. But growing up in the 70s, I guess it was 70s and 80s, we didn't treat sports and extracurricular activities the way that we do as parents today. And I think, I did think about it a lot because I feel like we live in a society, and I was, my husband and I were full participants, where the children is the center of the family, and everything that we do is surrounding them and their activities and making sure they get from here to there. But when I was growing up, that's not how it worked. The children were not the center of the family. Not that they weren't important, but if we did things, it was in the neighborhood, at the Y, or, somewhere you could walk, or your parents just weren't killing themselves to get you to hours and hours of practices. So that being said, I think it's an inordinate amount of hours. And I do remember very specifically being extremely excited when my children started driving, terrified first because they were terrible, but excited that I didn't have to, take them everywhere all the time that they could get themselves to their own practices, and I would just need to show up for games. So it's a significant amount of time.
So, what in the heck? How did this happen? How do we think we got to this point where it used to be a kind of a fun pastime, and now it's almost a professional thing while you're still in middle school and high school? That it's your parents' job, and then it's also turns out to be your job, especially once you get into select sports and stuff like that, and the competitions and the tournaments. How do you think we got here?
Capitalism.
You
I mean,
by the gyms and the
well, yeah, all of that. I mean, well, I think it's physical fitness for one. I also remember, never really going to a gym to work out when I was growing up, and like on my college campus, I don't even know where it was. And like that life today is not, I mean, people are very much into fitness. People are very much into competing, and they've created entire industries around, facilities that you create. So all of these sports can be done indoors: volleyball, football, basketball, and competitions, and, all of that. So that's one thing. And I think that, I think each generation from the beginning of time has always wanted to give their children what they didn't have. And so I think that plays into it too. So I think it's a lot of different things of the way that, society has evolved, and, just like we didn't have social media and whatnot back in the day, and now that's like all, the thing. So I think things have just evolved over time.
It's an interesting evolution, though. I can remember, being in my 20s and 30s and watching yours and Derek's life and going to all of these things and your weekends being filled up and thinking, oh my gosh, is this what I'm going to have to do one day when I have my own family, and just being exhausted just watching you. So it definitely is an evolution, but I'm not sure that it's been a good one, because I do kind of miss the good old days of this just being a fun thing.
I think it depends on your perspective. I think it depends on how you approach things. And I think it depends on whether, once you get into all of this stuff, like, kind of similar to the question that the caller or the person wrote to Dave Ramsey about, is this okay or not? You got to know why you're doing it. And if it is so overwhelming that you're exhausted and that there's dysfunction in your family and you can't step away from it because it has to happen, then maybe it's not great. But if it's something that, you feel like the children are getting, that they're balancing everything else in their lives, because I think that's where, I kind of question some of the things that we've done in the past, because it becomes real imbalanced. And if you can't figure out how to right that ship, for whatever reason, then it probably isn't very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me, like, I guess I just started thinking about the money and how much money we have put into it. And it's like, once you just start putting more money in, and it's sad because you think of it as investing. And it's very sad, but you're investing all of this money into it. It's like, you better take this seriously and stop playing around. Don't play around with this, because this is my whole paycheck or whatever it is. and it's just been, it's sad, but like in the beginning, at first, it was all about building confidence. Like, oh, I noticed there's something with my child that, maybe being a part of dance. I noticed that they're a dancer. They're dancers. Maybe being a part of dance and being on a stage and everything might help with, confidence or whatever. So it started off as that, and, building friendships or whatever. And then it just went into something, like I didn't expect, I guess, especially
it takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't understand how much it would. We didn't know. I mean, we didn't understand how much this would cost us.
And cost is more than financial.
Right. Like when I was a kid, everything that was extracurricular, it was free. Most of it was like theater, cheerleading, all of that. If I wanted to be a part of anything like that, at that time it was free to be able to do these activities, and maybe you would pay for your gym shoe or your cheerleading shoes or something, you know. But now everything costs money, everything, even at the school, you know, everything costs money. But yeah, I don't. So now it's like, once you invest in this, okay, do you want to go to school doing this? Do you want to pursue this as a career?
Yeah, and then sometimes there are unrealistic expectations. And I
Right.
think what ends up happening sometimes is, like you said, you start with the great best intentions of, let's work on our confidence, let's work
Yeah.
on this, let's have some relationships with friends, etc. And
Hmm.
then, depending on what you're in, whether it's sports or dance or whatever, then you start to talk to other people. The coaches or the teachers start telling you how great your child is and how they actually need this little extra thing. So maybe if you didn't just come twice a week, if you add a third night a week, then, X, Y, and Z can happen. And then, add a fourth night a week, and woo. And then as they get closer to college, then it's like, well, this is something they can get a scholarship in. And I've literally seen people on teams that we've been on before that are really struggling financially, especially when you start getting past school and starting to do select and club and all of those kinds of things, and they cannot afford it. I obviously don't know their finances, but talked about the financial struggles that they were having, but felt desperate to continue this. And then it becomes a mental health issue, even, because then the children have to make the teams or get selected for the dancing or whatever the case may be. So then it's like a whole nother thing. And so, from the financial perspective, if we put all of that money into a 529,
Right.
then, the same outcome could happen from a perspective of getting scholarships to school.
So I love that you said that, because that was going to be my very next question: is how much does saving money on college tuition play into motivation to continue on and like upping the ante? So I just want to give a couple of stats here. So according to the NCAA, only 2% of high school athletes are awarded scholarships to compete in college. And then about going pro, 73,712 NCAA football players. Of that, only 254 are drafted. Of women's basketball, there's about 16,000 players and only 31 are drafted. With college gymnasts, there's 1,500, but there's only
College gymnast.
That's what I said. Yeah. 1,500 college gymnasts in D1, D2, and D3, but only 762 scholarships. And the percentage of dancers that go on to turn professional, it's 3 to 10%, depending on who you're talking to. So the odds are definitely against you. And I think that maybe, and again, we haven't been here. DJ, our oldest, just started middle school football last year. And so we are at the beginning of all of this. And, as I said, Christina has done some dance, but we've never, gotten to the select and all of those other things. But I wonder if that plays a lot into motivation into your decision about, is this going to get my kid into school? And so that'll save me money and maybe it'll all balance out. Or, maybe this kid can go pro or professional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think my son knew he was going to be an NBA star. But from and he's not even playing in college. So that was never really our goal, for them to play in the pros. It would have been nice if they would have gotten a scholarship, but that wasn't really our motivation for doing it, because you kind of have to be realistic as you go along. And those children who grow up to be college students who either play in college and beyond are that is a full-time job, and that is
Yes.
they have to be so internally motivated. And I think what happens is you will have student or children who are very good in their younger years and even into their high school years, but the commitment that's necessary to play at the top levels of, dance, gymnastics, Olympics, sports, all of those kind of things has to be super intense. And sometimes by the time they get to high school, and sometimes by the time they get to where they're about to graduate, they're done.
Yeah.
They're tired of it. They've been pushing so hard for 5, 7, 12 years that when they get to it, and that creates mental turmoil for them because they're stressed about having to tell us after we've spent all this money and all this pressure that I don't want to do it anymore. I think I just want to be a regular person,
Right.
or whatever. So I mean, for us personally, we weren't doing it so that they could go pro. It would have been nice to get scholarships, but then you also have to be realistic. You have to at some point kind of look at your children and look at the competition, and are they the same? Are they close? Are they tall enough? Are they, all of those, are they committed? Because what oftentimes I have experienced as a parent, my husband and others I've seen, is that the parents want it more than the children after a while.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that we're not going. I've already been to college. And I can't make the team. So
I was reading that one mom who's got a daughter in competitive cheer. She said one day she could get a scholarship. She said everybody's saying when they brush aside the expense. But she said one day she realized that she probably spent as much on 3 years of cheer that 1 year of college would have cost. And she said by the age of 15, she would have saved enough for the entire college education.
Exactly. It's absolutely
It's
true.
true.
Yeah. And then especially with cheer, because where do you go after college? Like, are you going to become a Dallas Cowboy?
Well, you can,
cheerleader?
but they don't pay
They
money.
don't get
That's
paid.
like a
Right.
hobby.
Right.
Those
Exactly.
professional cheerleaders, they don't get paid enough to like eat dinner.
I don't think they get paid.
Yeah,
They
They
do,
do?
but it's real small amount
It's
of
like
money.
a stipend.
Yeah.
Right.
we do. But yeah, my son, he was involved in, before the dancers, my son was involved in sports. And so I just remember spending all that money on coaches and, travel and all of that, all of those expenses. And then, he decided, I think in high school, maybe his junior year, he didn't want to play anymore.
Mm.
And it was when he stopped playing, we're all like, what do we do? Like we're thinking,
Now what?
me and my husband were looking at each other like, what do we do? What do we do at this point with him? Well, he needs to graduate from high school, go off to college,
Right.
But we didn't even know what to do. Like there was some times when, one of our daughters was trying to think, well, I don't know if I want to do dance anymore. And it's like,
Oh my goodness.
what?
You owe me
You owe me millions.
$50,000.
You owe me millions.
That's when you give them an invoice.
Right. You owe me millions, and now you have to get a job.
Right. And, I feel bad that I did that. I'm thinking, my response was, well, you owe me this money, or what's the plan now? Like I'm looking at her like, okay, all of these years, well, you got to figure out something, what you're going to do with your time, all of that. Instead, I should have taken a step back, but she ended up being okay.
Maybe that's why she's still dancing now. She said, maybe I shouldn't.
She's like,
Stop
on
dancing.
second thought. Consideration.
Have you ever thought, looked at your children and thought, you're probably not going to get a scholarship. You're not that good. You're good, but are you good? Because like everyone, as I tell my kids, everyone's a glory, but no one wants to grind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and even if someone's baby is competitive. I mean, I was competitive. I even went to state and track, got a medal, but I wasn't like D1 level speed running. And so I just wonder sometimes, is the motivation, can the investment in these activities from a parent perspective cloud your child's true talent?
Mm.
Well, that was my point when I was saying that, as you start out, it's innocent enough. And then the teachers and the coaches start telling you, oh, if you add one more day, they can get
Right.
even better. And, oh,
Yeah.
I can definitely get them a scholarship. All you need to do is sign up for my $500 fee,
Yep.
for the private coaching and the this and that. And yeah, I mean, that's why I said you've got to kind of be able to step back and go, okay, is this really great? And when you go out to some of that competitive stuff, you can see whether you're really competitive or not. I remember going to a
You see the top
basketball
dog.
tournament in Arkansas with our team and our boys walked in and they looked like they were in kindergarten and they were getting ready to play people in high school. I mean, these kids were like minimum 6'5", and our boys were scratching at 6 feet, and it was like, whoa. And I mean, so you can see it. It's are you willing to be realistic about it? And are you listening? Are you watching and paying attention and really being realistic, or are you listening to the people who are trying to earn a living?
Right. And so we are an academic academic show. So do you feel like there was a positive impact, or, Yvette, one of your girls is still doing dance. You think there's been a positive impact participating academically?
Ooh, I mean, the focus is so much on dance and everything like that. I feel like we weren't really just looking at it from one of my kids, or anyway, I don't mean to call her out or anything, but I don't
name any names.
But, and she probably would agree with this, is just focusing on SAT and ACT, and putting money into tutoring and all of that. We more so focused on the dance, on the coaching, the private coaching, and all of those things, and putting money into that. And we should have held back and put more money into tutoring and getting the academics taken care of, because at the end of the day, for college and everything like that, you can't get into a university. I mean, you can get into the department, but you can't get into the university.
What does that mean?
Meaning, if you don't do well with your ACT and SAT, or you're academically, if you're not doing good academically, you can get into the dance department, but you can't get into the university.
Oh, so you'll be in dance school, but you won't be in.
You can't even get into college now. I mean, you can't get into college.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, how would you have made that? So, you have these very talented, super promising girls and a finite income, right? Or no, I guess you're a real estate agent, so it's not finite.
Right now, it sounds home prices right now. This is crazy.
The thing is, no, I mean, like when I started real estate, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started real estate. Not because, definitely my husband was an investor and everything like that, but that was one of the only ways that I could keep my kids in dance. So I asked God, I said, God, I need your help in this, because the only way that I can keep my kids in dance, I have to be productive and I have to be able to pay these bills and everything. And God provided. I'm just saying that, so yeah, but I need money also for tutoring, and I need for those things academically. You know what I mean?
So how do you make those choices though then? Because to both of y'all's points, you're talking to the coaches and they're telling you how much promise your kid has, and you're talking to other moms and dads and they're saying, hey, this studio across town 45 minutes away, that's the one you really need to have your kids in if they're going to go to the next level. And I could just see it snowballing. And tutoring and anything else academic that you might need to pay for starts getting pushed more and more aside. So how do you stop and make a decision to use some of it and balance that?
Well, for one of the kids, I had to pull back, and, what is a blessing is that, we were able to get her into a fine arts school of fine arts, and we were able to get her in that so that we could pull back a little bit and be able to save a little bit of money. I mean, I'm saying, my child that's in New York, she's on scholarship. She's on a full academic scholarship, but I'm still paying for her housing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still paying a month for rent so that she can live in Manhattan.
That's not expensive or anything.
So she lives in a very tiny space.
I imagine.
And so that she can just be able to walk to school and everything, so she is one strong girl. I tell you what, I mean, she's doing it all on her own out there, of course, learning New York and everything. And she doesn't have a job. She can't have a job.
Right. Because
she goes to school from 8 a.m. and then she does her academics and everything like that with the university. So her day is over maybe at 9:30 at night. So she's depending on us, for housing and for food and all of those things, But yeah, with my other child, we had to pull her out of studio, and she'll get back into it again and everything, but we had to just like readjust some things, just like, okay, what's important? Really what's important is her academics. So put money towards tutoring, put money towards those things. You know what I mean? Let's take a moment and learn from the other one, learn from her, and this is our last child. So let's do this right, And so, it's a blessing that she goes to Booker T.
Yeah, here's what I would say. I think as parents, you know better and you do better. So, to Yvette's point, the first 2 children, they were practiced, and now you're working it on the third. But what I would say is that, no matter where you are in your journey of raising your children, if you can get to the point where you just say, okay, it's the beginning of the year, people are making New Year's resolutions, et cetera, et cetera. You have to have the courage as parents to sit down and be on the same page. And part of the challenge can be sometimes is that the husband and wife may not be on the same page. One wants to go in one direction and one wants to go in the other direction. But just like you have to kind of balance your finances for other things, you need to just kind of sit down and decide what is the priority. And like we're talking about, academics is certainly a priority because people can't take your mind away from you. They can't take away, your education. So I think what I've learned over time is, I have a vast friend network, and we've all raised our children in different ways. And I have a bunch of friends who chose to send their children to private elite schools in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And one thing that I learned from one of those parents is that the children who their kids were competing with in those elite private schools, their parents prioritized education. Doesn't mean that they didn't do sports and dance and all of those kinds of things. And they typically have quite a bit more money than the average person. But what they did do is that tutoring was not when your child is struggling, oh, we've got to go get a tutor, or we've got to go do it. Tutoring is just a part of learning.
Yes.
But when classes started, they had their tutors on day one. So you didn't have a chance to fall behind in math or science or whatever, because classes started and tutoring started, and it was just a part of what they do. So I wish that I had learned about that sooner and, kind of taken some time to process that and figure out whether that was something we wanted to do too, because I think that would have helped us balance out the education and the sports. And then you wouldn't get to the point where you're trying to study for SAT exams and things like that, and you're scrambling to go find a tutor in the last 6 months before you need to try. Tutoring is a part of the education process. So as much as we are serious about getting our kids in all these extracurricular activities and paying for private coaches and all of those kinds of things, we've got to try to do the same thing on the academic side, because based on those statistics that you read, Danita, it is much more likely that our children can earn their way into a scholarship and a full scholarship academically than they will from an athletic or other extracurriculars activity standpoint. And then to Yvette's point, sometimes you can get a full scholarship that doesn't take care of everything. So that's great that her daughter has a full scholarship educationally, and paying for housing in Manhattan is not a small thing. So that's almost like, having to pay for school as well. But imagine if she had to pay for both.
Right.
So, I think that's what I would challenge younger parents at this point to do. Just think about what's important to you. What are your values as a family? And if you really do value education, then your money should represent what you value. And if it doesn't, then you're off balance.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
When I taught there was a local school in the Dallas area, which is an elite charter school. When I was there, they were ranked 7th in the nation by Newsweek magazine as one of the top academic schools, for public schools. And what I noticed there was, to the extent like, when parents send their kids off to sports and practicing after school, their kids were going to Kumon after school. They were going to Mathnasium after school.
Right.
They were going to, these different academic and enrichment clubs after school. Now they were bad at sports. they were horrible. They stunk at sports, but academically speaking, it in the same way, it was just, this is what you do after school. You go to this and rigor. I mean, the academics at the school I taught at was extremely rigorous. Then after that, they're doing more on top of that as well. And so, but then there could be an overbalance the other way. I mean, underbalance the other way as well, to your point. But finding that balance is extremely critical, because we know how much more expensive college is getting, and we want to make sure that I always say, if you can get in athletically, great, but if you cannot, or wouldn't it be great if you got both? What if you got an athletic and academic scholarship? That would be a great opportunity as well. So you have to be prepared on both sides.
Yeah, and I think you just need to balance it. You need to decide what are your priorities, what are your values as a family, and give some to both. And your money doesn't lie. That is where your priorities are.
So, Dave, what are, we're not just talking about tutoring here. What other kind of academic assistance might parents be considering investing in?
Yeah. So, I mean, you have college counseling, and so that's where there's you can always start with your guidance counselors at your schools, but many times they're spread very, very thin.
Oh my gosh, the ratio is like 400 and something to one student.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to get a lot of help there necessarily, but it is one resource. But another one is people who will actually come alongside you and help you to go through the entire college process, to help navigate it and help them to kind of get to where they want to be. You also have people that can help you with getting scholarships, focus just exclusively on getting you to find all the scholarships that maybe you didn't know were out there besides the general ones that the school offered. There are thousands of scholarships that go unused every single year. So they can kind of help you to navigate through that. You also have specialty counseling like ADD or ADHD counseling to help.
Which would be so beneficial before you go off to college.
Oh yeah, because there's so many temptations there. that can really derail you if you're not ready for it. And so just helping them to work through just getting your systems in place and having to navigate that as well. There's summer in academic enrichment. There's summer camps. There are literally camps you can go off to. I remember, I'm not sure as much if it's a big deal now, but they had this thing called Governor School.
What is that?
It's like the academic program where you go off to University of Texas at Austin for the summer, and you are doing intensive academic enrichment. I remember kids from our school did it when I was in high school. And it was a pretty big deal as well. They probably have something like it now. It may call different things in different states, but they're state sponsored as well. And then some people, is going to a private school. If you go to this particular school, that getting the academic rigor that they feel that they need can be done through going through particular private schools or moving into particular school districts as well. That's another. Parents may even think buying a home in a particular district is an investment as well.
That's very true.
Yeah. And then also just, saving for college, serving, you have your 521 plan, 529 plans, and your ESA plans, or, they're tax advance savings. They're designed to be used for, to put towards education expenses as well. And then you also have, SAT and ACT coaching as well, which is the area I get into. And Kenya, to your point, I have a lot of clients who come to me a month before the test, and they want me to make it rain.
Make it rain.
I can't teach all of high school math in a month. I'm sorry, I cannot do that. But that, but they were, oh my gosh, and we have to actually get into these schools, and we want to, consider getting scholarships. And sometimes it's I do what I can with what I have, but sometimes it's just too late. As well. And so, but anyway, there are many different routes to make investments. And then the question I guess parents have to ask is, where am I going to get the biggest return? Where am I going to get a greater return on my investment? And, as someone who is an educator and someone who's worked with kids and someone who, played sports and all those things, is that, investing in education, no matter how it looks, to help them to grow is going to be beneficial, whether they play sports or not, because it's going to help them for the long term. It's going to help them to make sure they have their priorities right as well.
The other thing I was going to jump in and say that I wish I had done with our children, and Yvette kind of mentioned it earlier, that there are some free things. So I wish I would have made my children also pick something else to do, like the debate club, like the chess club, like something that they weren't terribly interested in, but no, like from a debate perspective, that's awesome for helping you get your thoughts together and to articulate yourself, and just something that they're really not interested in, but that would be helpful and probably free, that would help round them out a little bit. So, I would encourage parents to think about that too. There's nothing wrong with your child being really interested in dance or basketball and you doing all that you can, but balance it out and put a couple other things in there too that will help them.
Oh my gosh, UIL has so many different opportunities for competitions. Jonathan was in, what was his UIL? Or he was like 7. His was storytelling.
Can you clarify for people who don't know what a UIL is?
I don't know what it stands for. Yeah, I don't know. It's the in-school competitions.
Basically what they're state sponsored competitions in different areas, like debate. You have it for sports as well, but there's a lot of different unique little areas that you can compete in, and you can compete against students across the state in these areas. Like there's writing competitions, and there's speech competitions, and there's I don't know if they do chess, but there's different unique things. And so every state has their own version of it, but this is the one for Texas.
Yeah, we did a show.
It stands for University Interscholastic League.
There it is. Yes.
Yeah, we did a show with one of the people from UIL, and he talked all about the different academic competitions. But there's just so many opportunities to strengthen your brain, and they're free or free-ish, close to free, that you can do. Yvette, I love that you mentioned that you just didn't even know what you were getting into at the beginning. And David and I are at the beginning. And so if you guys could talk to what the expenses are, like how much do you think that it's it is cost you, and you don't have to tell us, dollar amount necessarily, but what kind of things are you paying for if your kids are in sports, and especially select sports and dance and things like that?
So you got tuition, and that is for the classes, just to take the classes, ballet, contemporary, lyrical, all of those different classes. Then you have your competition fees.
Oh, those be.
So you got competition. So if the teacher or whoever it is, the studio owner sees, that your kid could possibly compete, so you're going to have to pay for the competition fee, and that can range. I mean, like it's like $250 each competition. So, and also if you're a soloist, so then you're paying an extra $200.
Whoa.
So you're competing not just with a group, but you're also competing as a soloist too.
So you have to pay a competition fee for the group and then also as a soloist.
Yeah.
So that's $400, and it could be out of town as well.
Yeah, just add that up. I mean, seriously. I mean, we were paying. There were some times that we got scholarships, so look, I'm just going to say thank you.
Yes.
The studios that gave that, because I don't think that my kids would be this far, because I think, there would have been, I would have had to take one child out or something. And that's not fair, because both of them are dancers. It's not fair for both of them, for if I would have done that. But yeah, we did get scholarships. So, but still, I mean, then you got costume fees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just with costume for competition, but it's also costume for recital. And, so you can't like recycle them. I'm like, can I use the one no, can't do that. I have all the costumes in the closet. I don't know what I'm going to do with. Nobody really wants them, unless they're maybe a soloist and they might say, I wanted that last year,
Last year.
And most of them don't, so they're just sitting there, just material sitting in my closet.
And how much is the costume average?
I just remember paying $1,100.
Wait, what?
I think it was $1,100 for both of the girls for costumes. It ranges, because look, with ballerinas, I mean, their costume can be like $500 just for their tutu and all of that. $500, $800 for a costume. For them to compete in their tutu and their all of those things. My kids were not specialists in ballet, but I just remember, talking to parents and everything and how much they would pay for these extravagant costumes. And they go and compete at YAGP events. That is like the best of the best competitions for a ballerina. And so it can be very expensive. So if you got two kids involved in that, I was just like, my husband and I would just look at each other. We would, and it would just so happen that I would, do well, for like in real estate or something like that. And then just, here you go. Here's all my money. Yeah.
Here's all my money.
Here it is.
On my commission.
I can get my nails done, something, but, I would talk to parents, and some parents would, donate their blood. I mean, this is like real serious. This is like,
I'm sorry. What did you say?
They would, they would joke around about it, but they're really serious. They probably, they would donate their blood or their platelets, in order to pay for a certain tuition. And
you really need to step back and think. at that point. You're trying to sell a kidney so you can keep your kid in piano lessons or whatever.
You know, it's not just like, you know, once they get to this level of competition, then, you know, also you have to pay for private coaching.
Yeah.
And what I would recommend possibly is,
YouTube?
huh?
YouTube?
Yeah. No. What, for platelets?
No. Instead of going to a private coach and just going, you can learn anything you want on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. But some kids can't, you know, take in that quick. But anyway, I would recommend private coaching. I would recommend possibly doing studio or not private coaching. There are ways that you can get your kids to compete, you know, without studio sponsorship. There is a way. You got to just invest in those, or, you know, research it out. You need to research it out. But yeah, if you're able to get by with just doing private coaching somehow, you know, for maybe a year, and then work on, and then pay money on academic stuff like tutoring or whatever, something else outside of what that is, you know.
One of our listeners is saying that she delivered pizza to help her son play baseball.
There it is.
Gotta get super creative. Kenya, select sports, how expensive can that get?
It depends on the sport. So typically volleyball is really expensive, kind of basketball, soccer. But on average, it depends. So if you're on a local select team of some sort, for us, when we started out in volleyball, and this was probably, I'm going to go with 6, 7, 8 years ago, because Nia's a junior in college now. But she was to play select volleyball on a limited regional traveling team was $3,000 for 4 months.
For 4 months.
Yeah. And that did not include the travel piece. That was just the ticket to be on the team. And then it might have included some travel for her. But like, then as the parent, you have to travel too. And then if you were on a traveling team that was more than regional, that was more national, then that was like $5,000 just to do the January through April, May, unless you got to nationals, and then there were a couple more months added on to that. Basketball was a little bit cheaper for traveling teams for Zion. In the last few years, it was about $3,500. And then that didn't include, because a parent has got to go, either one or both for the family or whatever. Oof. So, I would just say that just going back to what are your values, what are your priorities, what's your financial situation, and make some calculated decisions to figure out how you're going to balance academics and extracurriculars. And sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes as parents, we feel like it's not fair if we can't provide our children with something that we've gotten them started in, but I can guarantee you they're going to be fine. You could lose a job or whatever, and you literally cannot, and they survive and they don't perish. The other thing that I know and that I have seen is that if your child is really, really, really talented, people will pay for it for you. Now, we don't typically get to that point because we feel like, we've got to figure out how to make it happen. But if your child is that talented and you literally say, we can't afford it, we're not going to do it, you would be surprised at who comes out of the woodwork to pay for it for your child so that they can, because it's a business, it's capitalism, so these coaches and these gyms and these select teams, sometimes those select elite teams are owned by professional or former professional players. So to David's point earlier, if your child is really that talented, then when you start saying no as a parent, we can't afford this, we're just going to take this route over here that's cheaper or this route over here that's free, you would be surprised at who will step up and say, well, no. I mean, if you can't afford it, we can work something out. We can work out scholarships or we can work out whatever. So that's why it's so important to understand what's really important to you as a family. What are your values? What's important to you? How are you balancing everything? and resist the urge to see what the Johnsons and the Joneses are doing and to feel like you're obligated to make this stuff happen for your children. Otherwise, they're going to be unhappy, unproductive, unsuccessful adults, because it's just not true. And you can spend all this money, like we said, and they get to be a junior or senior, and they're like, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to do
Just
this
not that
anymore.
into this. Right.
Yeah, my son actually said, it's not fun anymore. I said, really? Because it was fun when I was spending $5,000 every summer and we were running around the country traveling with your friends. You had fun then.
Right. You know, and I will piggyback on what you were saying about people will pay for it. And I texted a friend of mine whose daughter is on the UCLA gymnastics team. They're like huge, right? And so she's a single mom, and she paid both for private school, or her child was in private school, and then she also, you know, did all the gymnast stuff, all the competitions. And I'm sure she would say, yeah, she did get a lot of help, because she said, I still don't know how I afforded to do all that being a single parent. But what are some of the other creative ways that parents, because really with this show, we wanted to point out that it's important to try to do both, to invest in both academics and extracurricular. We're not, you know, being bad on extracurricular. David and I both were sports people growing up, and we still enjoy that. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there are so many benefits to being involved in extracurricular activities, but we just don't want to let one win over the other. So for those parents who are wanting to continue in these things and figure out how to balance it, what are some of the creative things that you either did or you've heard of people doing, short of selling their kidney on the black market, to try to pay for these lessons and things like that?
I mean, I think we've already talked about it. I think, you know, Yvette was hopefully there are people not selling their plasma a whole lot, but, you know, delivering pizzas. I mean, a second job if it's that critical.
Yeah.
I think you just have to get creative, but you've got to be. I just can't emphasize, because it's so emotional. You have got to figure out what's important to you before you get started, or reset every year, or reset when the season is over, and like be very intentional about making a decision about how you're going to move forward. And are you being balanced? So are you just doing the extracurricular? How's the academic side going? Is there an opportunity for you to participate in something and pay for something there, or maybe find something free on the academic side? But I think you just got to constantly reevaluate and, you know, do what makes sense. I mean, I would be more of a proponent of figuring out how to get extra jobs to pay off debt than I would to try to pay for extracurriculars.
Well, but we do live in Texas.
That's a different show.
That is a totally different show. But, you know, one of the things that David did is he coached basketball when DJ was on the team. And so DJ was able to be on for free. So that's one of the things you can do. Obviously, when you get to the higher levels and your kids are older, that's, you know, they're not going to let you just get out there. But
I mean, I worked at a studio. You know, I was one of the moms that worked there. And I would drop my kid off, and both of them, and I would be the one to help out and work there.
Yep. And do some bartering. Do some bartering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taxes for tutoring.
Right.
You know,
right.
My kid will do your social media, schedule all your social media. So for some of these lessons, we have an app called the Goal Setter app, which is kind of cool. And what you can do is you can set different goals for your kids. Like, I want to have karate lessons, and you can send to grandma, grandpa, Aunt Jane, or whatever, when there are birthdays or Christmas or other things where they want to give them some gift or something, and instead ask for a contribution for lessons, and it'll go straight into their little account towards their karate lessons or piano or whatever else they're doing. It's called Goal Setter.
I wrote that down. Thank you. You know, I tell you one thing. I'm also thankful for the parents or the grandparents and the and the aunties and the, you know, all of the people that have been involved as far as helping with tuition. So it just wasn't just me.
Right.
Grandma did help. Both grandmas. Yes.
Another thing that I saw was that you can look for used equipment. There's something called Play It Again Sports. I don't know. Do we have that around here?
I think I've seen them before.
Also on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes you can get stuff, cleats and things like that. Although you got to be careful when they're for boys and stuff because it can be kind of nasty. Girls can be nasty too. Oh, that's true. Good point. But just finding some of the equipment if you can get it used. And you guys talked about scholarships and also just think about, can you cut back on something? Maybe I don't have to have that Starbucks coffee and that whatever kind of sandwich every single morning. Maybe I can fire up my Keurig 3 mornings a week and cut back on that. Or, bring your lunch instead of eating out every day. That, that's a way that you can maybe try to afford both.
Another thing, just think about is maybe just incentivizing your kids too, to say, if you want to play this particular sport, then you have to maintain a certain grade point average, and if you do not, then, we may have to put this aside for a while, until just to make sure they're keeping their priorities right. Because I have kids all the time that say, "Oh, Mr. Bill, I couldn't do your homework last night because I had a game," and I say, "I don't have any pity for you. I was a student athlete too, and you made a commitment to this, but that doesn't mean that your academics goes by the wayside." And so I said, well, sorry. And sorry, not sorry, but, they have to, balance it as well. And so it's making sure that, that with all the push for the other extracurriculars, that it does not compromise the academics. And if one has to go, it's always going to be, at least in our family, it's going to be the extracurricular for a season if it needs to be, so they can get their refocus and stuff. And magically, it seems like whenever that happens, they get their stuff together.
Yep. Got to be consistent as parents, though, because they see through you when you start threatening that stuff and not following through. But that's an excellent idea. If you can be consistent and follow through on that, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thanks for joining us. We do appreciate your time. For additional resources and information, you might want to check out our School Days episode, the one about student athletes. We invited one of our friends who is the chaplain at TCU. And he's also over Fellowship of Christian Athletes at TCU, and one of the players on the football team. And they came just to tell us about just a realistic view of what it is like to be a student athlete when you're in college. So that might be one that you want to check out. But Noggin Educational Foundation is the premier sponsor of School Days. So we always want to let you guys know what's going on with Noggin. We're currently taking applications for 2 of our programs. Noggin offers 12 hours of free private tutoring to students through our educational coaching program, and also through our ARD advocacy program. Parents receive support in securing services and accommodations their kids need at school for learning disabilities or special needs. And with the closure of schools and distance learning and Omicron and all that's going on, the education gap sometimes has widened for all of our children, but for low-income students as well. And the one-on-one intervention we provide is vital. So see our website, nogginfoundation.org, or email me at Doneda, DONEDA, at nogginfoundation.org for more details.
And if you have been inspired by this episode and would like academic coaching, you can reach out to me, because I am an academic coach in addition to being a mathematics teacher. I do everything from reading, writing to SAT, ACT coaching as well. You can reach me at David at noggineducation.com, because it is a separate organization, or you can go to my website, noggineducation.com as well.
Yeah. And 2 weeks from today, we'll welcome back CEO of National School Choice Week, Aaron Campanella. Aaron will be joining us to talk about the impact of the findings of a recent survey they conducted that reveals how parents feel about navigating the school decision process and the impact the pandemic has had on school choice. As always, head to our website, schooldayshow.com, for more information and all that we're doing and for the resources mentioned on School Days. And remember, you don't ever have to miss a show. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audible, and pretty much anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noggin Foundation. That's Noggin. And last but not least, we always want to end the show by saying that David and I are parenting by grace.
I know that's right.
We depend on God to give us the wisdom and strength we need to raise our kids into flourishing adults. And if you'd like to know more about that, please feel free to email us at info@schooldayshow.com. Have a great week and stay safe.